Have a regular here, Paul Eisenstein from Headlight News,
Headlight,
headlight.news.
headlight.news. Yes.
Yes, I wanted to clarify. I knew because when I first looked for Headlight News, I did headlightnews.com and it was some newspaper in Nevada or something like that.
Yeah,
So,
the middle of Arkansas. And the weird part is that's not the name of their newspaper. They just took that site name.
those rascals there. So I wanted, yes, we wanted to talk. Well, let's start off with the EPA rules on the EVs last week that came out. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was quite interesting to see what happened. And for those folks who aren't familiar with it, EPA a year ago came up with rules that would have basically been phasing in through 2032, and eventually reaching a point where EVs were supposed to account for about 67% of the total US new car fleet. And that's substantial. Two out of three vehicles would have to be all electric by 2032. And the ramp up to 2032 was fairly aggressive. That was the critical thing a lot of people were concerned about, particularly in the domestic auto industry, as well as some of the imports, interestingly enough, particularly Toyota, which may be the single automaker among the top 10 that is most opposed to going all electric. Might seem odd when you think about it, because Toyota, of course, has always positioned itself as green, but they're not fans of EVs. They're fans of hybrids and plug-ins. Anyway, back to the subject. What we saw was the EPA rolling back the standards between now and the end of the decade. So basically, it's sort of the reverse bell curve. It goes a little bit like this, if you will. It's slower to reach the numbers that they had originally targeted, but by 2032, they still are wanting to get up to 67% with a big asterisk. And the asterisk is that they are giving automakers the possibility of having slightly lower numbers, about 56% all electric, if they can get up there with 15% pure, basically a plug-in hybrid. So the total of vehicles that could run at least 50, 60 miles in all electric mode would slightly be higher. But for those who still might have range issues by then, 2032, there would be an option.
So basically, this is related to the slower than anticipated rollout of electric vehicle sales, then, you think?
Yeah, no, we have to be real careful here. There's been a lot of really inaccurate coverage, led in part by a fairly concerted campaign of misinformation and outright disinformation from certain groups. We know that some of the oil lobbying groups have a campaign to try to tar and feather, as it were, EVs. And so what we are seeing is a slowdown in growth of electric vehicles, not a slowdown in EV sales. There's a big difference. Now, when you go from 2019 to the early part of 2023, the EV market share increased 800%. It got to just short of 8% of total U.S. new vehicle sales. That's substantial. I'm trying to think if any time in history we've had a segment of the market that grew that fast. Last year, it started to be a bit of a flattening out. Now, what does flattening out mean? Yeah, it only grew by about 40%, 45% last year. And this year, we began with total sales of nearly 1.2 million EVs. That's a lot of EVs, considering it was in the tens of thousands as recently as 2019. But okay, they slowed down. What does slow down mean? We'll only go from 1.2 million to 1.5 million this year. That's still a 25% growth. And again, tell me what other segment of the market grows that fast?
Well, hybrids, I guess, are growing quickly because they get back to range anxieties, infrastructure issues. We don't have to go through all the issues. There's a bunch of them. But I mean, but a lot of it is, for instance, I live in a complex of 600 units. We have 4 EV chargers here.
Right.
So things like that. But I mean, point being, and why probably one of the reasons Toyota was so happy was they've been involved in hybrids for a long time, and I know they were criticized a couple of years ago for not getting into EVs quicker, but now they kind of got the last laugh, right?
Yeah, it seems to be. Hybrids did grow, and that's the one segment of the market that in the last year, 18 months perhaps, has actually grown faster than the EV segment. So the hybrid sales were ever so slightly larger, higher than that 1.2 million that we saw in pure electrics. And this year, we'll see. But one of the reasons that both segments continue to grow is simply because there's more product. You mentioned Toyota, I mentioned Toyota. And the reality is they have now got a hybrid or plug-in hybrid version of essentially every product they offer. There's a handful of them that don't, but even those we expect will follow up. I mean, even the big Tundra pickup now, a large share of those are hybridized. So we're going to see more and more of that going forward, and we're going to see more and more plug-in hybrids going forward. Mercedes just last week announced that they're going to do, was it the GLC? They're going to do a plug-in hybrid. And the reality is for a lot of folks who do have access to a charger or could put one in. Plug-in hybrids make a lot of sense. I was talking with somebody just earlier today. His father has a plug-in hybrid, and he has gone, what did he say, 1,200 miles without putting a drop of gas in the vehicle.
Hmm.
Yeah. You almost have to worry about the gas going bad when it gets to be that far.
Actually, it's interesting you say that. I was worried about that too. And some of the vehicles out there, some hybrids now, will fire up the gas engine periodically, even if you have a full charge of the battery, to burn off some of the gas. And they'll also, I guess, and I have not verified this, but I've heard that a couple of the vehicles actually do things to try to keep the gas swirled and mixed to reduce the chance that the gas is going bad.
If you get stabilizer or something in the tanks, right? Like when you store your car, right? So
you put a stabilizer in, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, or when you put the lawnmower up for the year or something like that, right? Yeah. So you're in the New York, you're in the tri-state area. You're ready for the New York Auto Show. So tell us what you're looking forward to seeing at the New York Auto Show. What's going to be the big story coming out?
Well, there's relatively little big news, as has happened with auto shows in general. There are a few. The Hyundai, Genesis, Kia group, the three of them will be showing off some important products. We'll have Genesis releasing something today, and I'm under embargo, so I'll be very, very vague about it. We see, Hyundai has already announced that they'll do new versions of their Tucson small SUV and their Santa Cruz, the plug-in hybrid. Oh, sorry, not plug-in hybrid. Their compact pickup truck, that really funky little machine. And then Kia will have a new version of the Forte. Nissan's bringing out the Kicks, and they have the Infiniti QX80, their new flagship, which will really be, in a sense, almost a make it or break it for that brand. They've been struggling for a long time. There'll be a few other vehicles here that we'll see for the first time, and one that I'm particularly interested in seeing will be the new Macan, the Porsche Macan electric. So they are going to have both an electric version of it and a conventional gas-powered model.
Will the Chinese be there with their little tiny EVs that cost $10,000?
Not that I know of. I have to double check the latest schedule to see if there's going to be anything. The Chinese, interestingly enough, in years past, you remember they used to show up, especially in Detroit, saying, we're coming, we're coming. And I think what worries some people is they're not saying they're coming. They're not showing their products, but we know that they are getting ready to assault the U.S. I think they're worried. They're trying to figure out if they'll wind up getting into a battle with the Biden administration if they do decide to come in.
So what is you said that there's comparatively little big news coming out of the auto show, which is sort of the way that auto shows are going these days. What does that pretend? What does that pretend for the future of the Detroit Auto Show?
Well, the Detroit Auto Show is a real big question mark right now. The event in the summer turned out to be an unmitigated disaster. The good news was they did have Mustang there to at least get some attention. Interestingly enough, that one they actually debuted over in Hart Plaza rather than inside the old Cobo Hall, and that was pretty much it. They're moving back, as you know, to January, and what's interesting is they're going to be late in the same week as a Consumer Electronics Show, which I was stunned by their decision to do that, because one of the reasons they moved was because CES was taking away a lot of product. A lot of people who in the past, a lot of companies that would have introduced their high-tech vehicles in Detroit decided to go to CES instead.
Yeah.
Whether Detroit can somehow make it attractive enough to bring some of the vehicles back from CES, we're going to have to wait and see. I will tell you, recently had lunch with Rod Alberts, the head of the Detroit Auto Dealers Association, which puts on the auto show. And let's just say that it was clear, it was a background meeting, so I won't go into great conversation detail, but he realizes that it's going to be a challenge. And I think going forward, like a lot of auto shows, Detroit is going to be more of a consumer show than an international media show.
Yeah, going back
So
to
they're actually the same week then as CES for part of that week.
Yeah.
Wow. Because it used to be for a while there, it was CES, and then the following week was the Detroit Auto Show. That's when I was going to both.
No, I mean, the press days in Las Vegas will be Monday and Tuesday. And then Detroit will start up with its press days, but it'll mean anybody who's doing both is going to have to run pretty quickly. And frankly, I think there'll be more than a few journalists who will wind up staying at CES, because there's so much more to check out even after the press days end. I was there for an entire week last January, this past January. I couldn't come close to getting to what I wanted to see.
Yes, Matt is a veteran of the CES too, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, that was Mike Wendland was my CES mentor. He taught me sort of how to organize myself to get the most out of that show. But even so, it's just so big. It was impossible to see everything I wanted to see in the 3 or 4 days I was there.
When's the last time you were there?
2014, I think.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
it's been a while.
let's look at it this way. CES put up an entirely new West Hall, which is roughly 250,000 square feet, and it was all mobility, which, by the way, includes not just automobiles. It includes material from, John Deere and other farm implement companies. Hyundai, just outside the hall, put up a temporary building for its new Supernal unit, which is their flying robocab operation. And even then, they didn't have enough room. So you had a lot of automakers, including Honda, which introduced its all-new line of zero models of EVs, and several other big automotive exhibits that were over in the old part of CES. So all told,
the mobility part of CES when I was there was in the North Hall of the Las Vegas Convention Center.
Right.
And then some people were outside in the parking lots as well. But it's obviously at least twice that size now.
Oh, easily. Like I said, it's almost 250,000 square feet if you include Hyundai, almost 250,000 square feet of the West Hall. You do have a lot of exhibits that are outside in the parking lots of the Las Vegas Convention Center. And then you have more in the North Hall. And when they reopen South Hall, I'm sure they're going to have automotive there. And then there's a lot of automotive stuff that's off-site at various hotels around town.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to have to leave it at that, Paul. I appreciate you being on the show today. And how can folks reach out to you to get all your post-New York auto show coverage?
Well, they can go, first of all, to headlight.news, headlight singular, headlight.news. And of course, when they do, if they'd like, they can sign up. We have our emails. You can get it If you're really, really geeked on it, we'll send you an email every time something new is live. Otherwise, I usually recommend people sign up for our daily roundup newsletters. And we also have a podcast. So we'll be following a lot of what happened at the show here in our podcast coming up.